In every age, people have asked the same questions. What is the good life? How should we treat one another? What does it mean to be free or virtuous or just? What does it mean to be human? Western moral philosophy for beginners and Selenius Media takes you on a guided journey through the minds that shaped the moral backbone of the West, from the earliest Greek thinkers to the modern age. Lived stories of struggle, ambition, conflict, revelation, all unfolding against the sweep of history. If you've ever wanted to understand philosophy clearly, calmly, and humanly, if you want to know not just what these thinkers argued, but why it mattered, follow Western moral philosophy for beginners today and explore 10 more podcasts at Selenius Media. In our previous episode, we introduced Niccolò Machiavelli, a prominent figure of the Italian Renaissance known primarily for his political treatises, particularly The Prince. This episode will delve deeper into Machiavelli's moral philosophy, especially his complex relationship between power and ethics. Contextually situated in the tumultuous political landscape of late 15th and early 16th century Italy, Machiavelli's work transcends his time, igniting debates on power that persist today. Machiavelli is most famous for his pragmatic approach to power and governance, a perspective that challenges the conventional, moralistic views prevalent in his era. In The Prince, which serves as both a guide for rulers and a commentary on the political realities of his time, he articulates a stark, often unsettling vision of political life. Instead of basing governance on moral ideals like justice or virtue, he proposes that the effective ruler must sometimes follow a different set of rules, those dictated by necessity. Unlike many philosophers who sought to construct ethical principles based on an ideal view of human nature, Machiavelli presents a realist perspective. Central to Machiavelli's arguments is the notion that the ends can, in some cases, justify the means. This idea has become a cornerstone of Machiavellian philosophy. In this sense, morality is not an absolute standard for Machiavelli. Rather, it is contingent upon the political context and the exigencies of maintaining power. He argues that a ruler, always under the threat of instability and rebellion, may need to engage in morally questionable actions, such as deceit or even murder, to secure the state and maintain order. This perspective raises profound questions about ethics. Is it ever justifiable to set aside moral concerns for the greater good, or for the stability of the state? One of the key concepts Machiavelli introduces is the idea of virtue, which refers not to virtue in the moral sense, but to a ruler's skill, strength, and acumen in navigating the political landscape. Virtue is about effectiveness and the ability to seize opportunities, adapt to changing circumstances, and exercise power judiciously. This concept stands in contrast to the notion of fortuna, or fate, which signifies the unpredictable elements in life that can affect a ruler's success. Machiavelli suggests that a successful ruler should adeptly balance virtue and fortuna. He imagines the ideal leader as someone who is not only strong-willed, but also able to respond to fortune's whims. This interplay underscores the inherent instability of political life and the precariousness of power. Another critical element in Machiavelli's thought is the historical example. In his works, he often draws lessons from the actions of past leaders and historical events to illustrate his points. For instance, he examines rulers such as Cesare Borgia, whom he viewed as a consummate example of virtue. Borgia's ruthless and calculated behavior, including his decisive elimination of rivals, is portrayed not as moral justification for cruelty, but as a pragmatic approach to consolidating power. This analysis serves not only as a historical exploration, but also as an ethical reflection on the nature of governance itself. To see how Machiavellian thought manifests in contemporary situations, we can turn to political leadership today. Consider a leader faced with a serious national crisis, such as a severe economic downturn or a public health emergency. In such scenarios, leaders may argue that extraordinary measures, such as resorting to surveillance, restricting freedoms, or even sidelining democratic processes, are necessary for the greater good. From a Machiavellian perspective, such actions could be justified if they stabilize the nation or mitigate immediate threats, raising important ethical dilemmas about the balance between security and liberty. Likewise, in the realm of technology and artificial intelligence, the moral implications of power take on new dimensions. AI systems have the potential to enhance efficiency and decision-making, yet they also present significant risks, particularly in terms of privacy invasion and potential job displacement. The question becomes, should companies and governments prioritize innovation and economic efficiency, even if it means compromising ethical standards regarding individual rights? Reflecting on Machiavelli's insights, one might argue that the successful navigation of such challenges could require a pragmatic and possibly ruthless approach to governance and corporate responsibility. As we consider the ethical backdrop of Machiavelli's work, it is also essential to explore the criticisms directed at his philosophy. His apparent endorsement of manipulation and deceit has led some scholars and ethicists to label him as an advocate for tyranny or amorality. Critics contend that Machiavelli's ideas foster a cynical view of human nature, one that assumes people are only motivated by self-interest and power, displacing ideals of common good or moral integrity. Some argue that this cold, calculative approach undermines the social and ethical fabric of a community, encouraging leaders to justify harmful actions without regard for moral accountability. Later thinkers have responded to Machiavelli's legacy in various ways. For instance, Enlightenment philosophers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau have sought to counter Machiavelli's views by emphasizing the importance of consent, morality, and the social contract as foundational to legitimate political authority. Unlike Machiavelli, who viewed manipulation as a plausible tactic in statecraft, Locke and Rousseau argue for a vision of governance grounded in the collective will and ethical standards, suggesting that power should arise from the enlightened and rational consent of the governed. Yet, even seen through this lens, Machiavelli's insights have remained influential. His understanding of human motivations has permeated modern political discourse, where the term Machiavellian is often used to describe leaders or tactics perceived as unscrupulous or cunning. In sociology and political science, the concept of realpolitik, politics based on practical rather than moral considerations, can be traced back to his influence, highlighting the enduring relevance of Machiavelli's ideas. In considering the historical continuum, we can connect Machiavelli to earlier figures such as Plato. Plato's vision of a philosopher king exemplifies an ideal ruler guided by wisdom and virtue, presenting a stark contrast to Machiavelli's pragmatic approach, which eschews idealism for realism. Yet, Machiavelli does engage with this tradition, suggesting that the philosopher king's ideals are often impractical and can lead to incompetence in the face of political realities. Likewise, we can anticipate the further development of political philosophy through figures like Friedrich Nietzsche, who, although operating in a different context, grappled with the nature of power, morality, and the will to power, echoing some of Machiavelli's themes concerning the darker aspects of human ambition and governance. As we reflect on Machiavelli's assertions about the morality of power, we are prompted to consider how these ideas ripple through our everyday decisions and societal structures. The boundaries between ethical conduct and effective governance often blur, and we may find ourselves in situations where we must weigh long-term consequences against immediate actions. Such contemplations invite us to scrutinize our own ethical frameworks. Do we ever advocate for more Machiavellian approaches in our work or personal lives, driven by a pressing need to succeed or navigate intricate social dynamics? How do we reconcile our understanding of morality with the harsh realities of power dynamics in a world that often fosters competition and conflict. In acknowledging Machiavelli's contributions, we are invited into a deeper engagement with our ethics, extending from the philosophical to the personal. His work forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and governance, leaving us to ponder whether a balance exists between ethical ideals and the practical necessities of living in a complex and often unpredictable world. Machiavelli's approach to power, particularly in The Prince, has stirred robust debate and philosophical inquiry for centuries. One of the most provocative aspects of his moral philosophy is the challenge he poses to the conventional view that ethical governance must align with traditional moral values. Machiavelli invites us to scrutinize the necessity of moral compromise in the pursuit of effective governance, posing questions that resonate through time. At the heart of Machiavelli's thought is the pragmatic evaluation of ethics in governance. When he suggests that the ends may justify the means, he does not aim to dismiss morality altogether, but rather to elevate political effectiveness as a priority in certain circumstances. This position can initially seem stark, even ruthless, but it highlights the challenges leaders face in real-world governance. To understand Machiavelli more deeply, we must look at another of his key works, Discourses on Livy, where he contrasts the nature of princely rule with that of republican governance. This text elaborates on his belief that a republic can foster civic virtue and collective interests, while suggesting that a reliance on personalist power, like that seen in autocracies, is inherently unstable. In Discourses, Machiavelli raises the importance of laws and institutions as checks upon human ambition and the potential for tyranny. Here, he aligns more with ideals of republicanism than one might expect from a thinker so often characterized by opportunism. He contends that a balanced government, with representations from various sectors of society, can mitigate the potential for tyrannical rule. This insight remains pertinent, especially today, as many nations grapple with questions of governance, representation, and the balance of power. Consider how Machiavelli's analysis applies to modern democratic governance. In an era where institutions often seem to lean towards populism, manipulation of the electoral process, and erosion of normative ethical standards, the lessons of Machiavelli evoke both a cautionary note and a call for vigilance. For instance, political campaigns sometimes leverage misinformation and emotional appeals to manipulate public perception, often prioritizing electoral victory over a commitment to public truth. This behavior echoes Machiavelli's warnings about the seductive power of personal ambition, raising the question of whether such tactics are indeed justified if they lead to policy outcomes perceived as beneficial. Moreover, contemplating Machiavelli's understanding of virtue in contemporary governance necessitates a reflection on the qualities of our leaders. Today's political figure must not only exhibit skill in navigating complex political landscapes, but also possess the integrity necessary to maintain public trust. As we assess current leaders, we might find ourselves drawn toward Machiavelli's notion of the ideal ruler, one who can merge skill and fortune effectively. This invites further reflection. Should we always demand ethical purity from our leaders, or must we reconcile with a Machiavellian sense of realism? Perhaps there exists a middle ground where effectiveness does not require a complete disregard for ethical considerations. Expanding upon Machiavelli's insights, we come to recognize the intricate dance between ethics and power in various fields beyond politics, including medicine and business. Take, for example, the flourishing field of biomedical research, marked by rapid advancements, sometimes propelled by ethically murky waters. The pursuit of innovation can lead to morally ambiguous choices, particularly when considering issues like clinical trials of unproven treatments. Researchers are often faced with a dilemma. How do they balance the urgency of developing new therapies against the ethical need to prioritize patient safety? In some respects, one might argue that the commitment to save lives could justify expedient, albeit ethically questionable, actions if it helps to accelerate the deployment of potentially life-saving treatments. Similarly, in the world of technology, particularly concerning issues like data privacy and artificial intelligence, Machiavelli's concepts resonate strongly. The digital age presents enormous potential for innovation, yet it also raises significant ethical dilemmas regarding privacy, consent, and surveillance. Leading tech figures may find themselves navigating the Machiavellian waters of innovation and morality, placing them in situations where they must justify the collection of personal data to enhance user experience or improve services, effectively weighing individual rights against corporate objectives. The same calculations of risk, necessity, and pragmatism that Machiavelli explored seem more relevant than ever in the decisions facing technology leaders today. As we grapple with the implications of Machiavelli's thought, it is vital to recognize the limitations of his view. His advocacy for pragmatic decision-making, particularly under the guise of necessity, sometimes encourages a dangerous ethic of manipulation and ruthless calculation. This perspective can engender a chilling sense of nihilism, in which morality becomes entirely subordinated to the calls of power, raising concerns about the societal impact of adopting Machiavelli's philosophy wholesale. Critics warn that such an approach can erode the moral fabric of society, fostering environments where deceit and treachery become systemic rather than exceptional. Yet, this critique provides fertile ground for the evolution of moral philosophy. Thinkers such as Immanuel Kant, who wrote extensively on ethics and morality in the late 18th century, directly engaged with the Machiavellian tradition. Kant's deontological ethics, which emphasize duty and moral law, stand in stark contrast to Machiavelli's consequentialism. Kant would argue that ethical principles should apply universally, independent of the outcomes, thereby creating a categorical imperative that prohibits the manipulation of moral truths for pragmatic ends. This tug-of-war between Machiavellian pragmatism and Kantian duty provides a rich framework upon which contemporary discussions about morality in leadership can be scaffolded. Reflecting on this interplay between power and ethics invites us to consider modern counterparts to Machiavelli's governance philosophy. Leaders who disregard ethical concerns may mirror the very tyrants Machiavelli describes, missing the foundational role of legitimacy and moral accountability in effective leadership. Yet, on the other hand, the pressures of modern governance, where leaders may feel that they must sometimes act outside ethical norms to survive, mirror Machiavellian dilemmas. Another significant contemporary figure who echoes many themes present in Machiavelli's thinking is Hannah Arendt. Arendt's explorations of power, authority, and morality in the modern world delve deeply into the stark realities of political action in conditions of tyranny and totalitarianism. Her work encourages a critical analysis of where leaders stand politically and ethically, shedding light on profound moral complexities often obscured in the quest for power. This connection highlights an important thread in the Western moral tradition that continuously grapples with the intersections of ethics, politics, and the necessity of decision-making amid chaos. Closing our exploration of Machiavelli's moral philosophy calls for personal reflection amid the societal complexities we navigate daily. As we analyze power structures, be they in our workplaces, communities, or larger political contexts, we might find ourselves reconsidering our own ethical positions. When confronted with dilemmas requiring us to balance ambition and morality, where do we draw the line? Are we inclined to prioritize our aspirations at the expense of ethical standards, much like the leaders Machiavelli describes? Or do we hold fast to an ideal of integrity, even in the face of Machiavellian machinations? In reflecting on Machiavelli's insights regarding the morality of power, we are not merely engaging with historical philosophy. We are actively participating in an ongoing dialogue about ethics that shapes today's world. In questioning the relationship between ethics and efficacy, we open ourselves to a more nuanced understanding of leadership, decision-making, and our roles within these spheres. The journey through Machiavelli's thought challenges us to confront our assumptions, fostering critical evaluations of how we navigate the intricate moral landscapes that define our lives. As we move forward, may we remain vigilant about our ethical commitments, ever aware of the potential rifts between morality and the compelling allure of power. To further engage with the implications of Machiavelli's moral philosophy, it is essential to probe deeper into the lessons his ideas impart about leadership and the broader consequences of power in society. The distinction he draws between different forms of governance, particularly autocratic versus democratic models, provides fertile ground for contemporary analysis. In Discourses on Livy, Machiavelli lays out his vision of republican governance as a preferable system for fostering civic virtue and stability. He posits that when power is dispersed among various groups, it mitigates the risks associated with tyranny. This perspective remains salient today as many democracies grapple with the challenges of populism and centralization of power. Machiavelli's advocacy for a balanced government provides a framework to critique current events. For instance, the rise of populist leaders who dominate public discourse often leads to an erosion of institutional checks and balances, reminiscent of the very tyrannies Machiavelli warns against. Think about the recent political upheavals seen in various countries, where elected officials have sought to consolidate power at the expense of democratic norms. These scenarios reflect the very concerns Machiavelli articulated about personalist rule, that when power rests solely with an individual, it can lead to profound instability and potential despotism. The dynamics inherent in such political contexts beg us to consider how the virtues of republican governance that Machiavelli champions, such as the representation of diverse interests, are increasingly vital in ensuring moral accountability and effective leadership. Yet we must also explore how Machiavelli's philosophy doesn't dismiss the role of ethics entirely. His position challenges individuals to recognize that the application of ethical considerations in governance is often fraught with conflict. The inherent tension between moral obligation and pragmatic necessity becomes particularly relevant in times of crisis. Leaders frequently have to weigh decisions that can sacrifice ethical ideals for perceived immediate benefits for their society. The COVID-19 pandemic serves as a stark example. Many governments faced ethical dilemmas where balancing public health and economic stability required them to impose stringent lockdown measures, raising questions of civil liberties and freedoms. In such instances, Machiavelli's insights remind us that decision-makers act in complex environments dictated by competing interests and unpredictable circumstances. His realism engenders a conversation about how leaders must develop a resilient approach to governance, one where they can evaluate risks in both ethical and practical terms. Yet it's crucial to navigate these waters with a degree of moral responsibility. Otherwise, the legitimacy of the leadership can come into question when the trust of the populace is compromised. This leads us to reflect on the implications of Machiavelli's thought in the realm of business ethics. Many contemporary corporations operate in landscapes where the metrics for success often hinge on profit maximization, which can drive decisions that contradict ethical principles. For instance, consider the rapidly evolving tech industry, where companies might prioritize expansion and innovative development over the ethical considerations of user privacy or data security. Actions taken in the name of progress can lead to serious breaches of trust between the business and the public, paralleling Machiavelli's assertion that effective leadership must sometimes prioritize necessity over traditional morals. yet with the caveat that such tactics risk instigating backlash when stakeholders feel manipulated or deceived. In the medical field, the challenge of navigating ethical boundaries also resonates with Machiavellian thought. Healthcare professionals are often caught between the urgency of patient needs and broader ethical standards. For example, during the development of experimental treatments, practitioners might grapple with the question of whether it is ever morally justifiable to administer a treatment that lacks comprehensive testing but could potentially save lives. This echoes Machiavelli's concerns over the ethical sacrifices leaders must weigh against the imperatives of their roles. In these scenarios, professionals are compelled to scrutinize their ethical frameworks, contemplating how far they are willing to go in their quest to serve their patients and society at large. Moreover, the dynamic between innovation and ethical considerations can lead to moral ambiguities not only in medicine but also in emerging technologies, particularly artificial intelligence. The intersection of AI and ethical governance brings to light the necessity for a principled approach that avoids the pitfalls outlined by Machiavelli. In many tech-driven industries, algorithms can drive decision-making processes, from determining credit scores to impacting criminal justice outcomes. The complexity lies in ensuring that these systems serve the public good without reinforcing harmful biases or subjecting individuals to unwarranted scrutiny. The balance Machiavelli advocates between virtue and fortuna underscores the need for stakeholders to remain vigilant about the consequences of their technological advances. Ethics in these contexts cannot be an afterthought. Rather, they must act as the guiding principles of development. As we delve into these complex intersections, it is essential to explore how later political philosophers have both critiqued and built upon Machiavelli's ideas. The conversation surrounding ethics in politics underwent significant transformation during the Enlightenment, as thinkers like Kant and Rousseau endeavored to recalibrate the relationship between morality and governance. Kant's notion of duty and moral universality stands in stark contrast to Machiavelli's pragmatic realism. Kant emphasizes that ethical imperatives should guide all actions, independent of outcomes, thereby framing moral responsibility in universally applicable terms. This divergence prompts us to wonder about the implications of Kant's ethical framework in the context of Machiavelli's emphasis on necessity. If leaders adopt an ethical stance rooted in Kantian principles, would they be effective in navigating the complex realities of governance? Challenging scenarios arise where adherence to moral duties may conflict with the immediate demands of the populace, suggesting that Machiavelli's analysis still holds merit. The tension illustrates the enduring dialogue between ethical absolutism and the contingent nature of political life that continues to shape our understanding of responsible governance. Linking Machiavelli's legacy to modern political discourse, we can see how the complexities surrounding power and morality persist across generations. Consider the contributions of Hannah Arendt, a 20th-century philosopher who examined totalitarianism and the nature of evil in leadership. Arendt's work often interacts with Machiavellian themes, particularly in her exploration of the banality of evil and the moral compromises inherent in political action. Where Machiavelli offers insights into the necessity of effective, sometimes ruthless decision-making, Arendt reminds us of the moral weight that accompanies such power. Her analyses of historical figures and moments compel us to consider the degree to which leaders can act within an ethical framework while still pursuing objectives that may require unsettling decisions. By reflecting on Arendt's insights, we gain a more nuanced understanding of the ethical dimensions of power. She posits that in crafting a more ethical political climate, individuals within systems must accept responsibility for their actions, an important counterpoint to Machiavellian realism, which often justifies morally ambiguous actions. This engagement with Arendt invites us to ask critical questions regarding personal accountability and our roles in shaping political landscapes, pushing back against a purely Machiavellian outlook that amoral governance ultimately leads to chaotic outcomes. As we sift through these layers of philosophical discourse, it is crucial to return to our own lives and the frameworks we navigate daily. How can we integrate the lessons from Machiavelli's moral philosophy into our personal decision-making? Whether navigating the complexities of workplace ethics or engaging in civic duties, the fundamental question remains: where do we draw the line between necessity and morality? Are we equipped to challenge power dynamics in our communities or workplaces? Do we acknowledge when pragmatism fosters ethical dilemmas that risk compromising our values? Machiavelli's work ultimately serves as a springboard for crucial discourse on ethics and leadership. His musings compel us to develop a keen awareness of both the constraints of ethical behavior in governance and the imperative to hold ourselves and our leaders accountable. In recognizing these challenges, we extend our understanding of our roles, be they as individuals, leaders, or community members, within larger social systems. The interplay between ethics and power is not a simplistic formula. It is a tapestry of challenges, temptations, and obligations that we must navigate thoughtfully. Machiavelli's insights invite us to contemplate the moral dilemmas of leadership, not only in historical contexts, but also through the lens of contemporary issues we face today. As we embrace these teachings, we must remain attuned to the ramifications of choices made in the name of power and authority, ever mindful of the balance between ambition and our ethical responsibilities. In doing so, we may find clarity in our own ethical frameworks as we venture forth into the twilight of uncertainty that characterizes our world. As we grapple with Machiavelli's legacy, we come to appreciate the profound and often troubling questions that surround power, authority, and ethics, questions that call for reflection, dialogue, and ultimately a commitment to realizing the moral dimensions of our choices in the delicate ballet of governance and human interaction. 3934.
Midnight rails under silver moon, dusty boots on a winding road. A shadow's the only friend I've known since she packed up and let me go. Empty whiskey bottle on the seat, her laugh still echoes in my bones. Saddle's heavy with memories. I ride alone where the wind still blows. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Sunrise paints the horizon gold, but it don't warm a lonesome soul. Every town I pass feels half her size. Every trail's haunted by goodbye. I whisper prayers to open skies, hoping someday my heart'll find a brand new path beyond the pain, where broken hearts can heal in time. Nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be, nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be. to be. Nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be. Nowhere else to be.